everyone. Welcome to another webinar slash Q&A session hosted by myself and Daniel Lowe, but with proper, legitimate guest presenters this time. So we'll let them introduce themselves a little bit later, but just so you guys know, if you haven't joined this sort of webinar before, if we haven't had the privilege of hosting you guys, what we kind of do. So I'm a construction lawyer at Vincent Masons in Sydney. Daniel's a private equity in-house lawyer at UBS in Singapore. And our intention with this sort of monthly webinar session is really just to give young lawyers or law students an opportunity to kind of get a bit of a better insider look into the legal industry, explore some career paths, get some how-to guides, and really just tackle some of the nitty-gritty of what they don't teach you in law school and what you actually kind of learn with experience through practice. And we're super excited to actually present this session with Anne Wong and Minwoo Yim on what it's actually like to work in legal tech. So the format of this is more of a Q&A style. Anne and Minwoo will go through about 30-40 minutes of answering some common questions that they get in the course of their jobs and from their sort of mentees and bosses. And then we'll follow that up with about 30 minutes of general Q&A. As Anne and Minwoo go through their presentation, feel free to just write your questions into the chat. We'll read them out towards the end, and hopefully we cover everything in this session. But otherwise, Anne and Min are happy to take another look at your questions offline if we don't get through all of them, and hopefully prepare a little something to send out to you guys as well. Again, feel free to just basically ask any sort of questions, especially the hard ones. We love the super hard ones. As you kind of see, we are very unbranded, unsullied by sponsorship or legitimacy. So it doesn't really matter what you ask to us. Don't be fooled by the collared shirt. I'm wearing sweatpants down below. Daniel's wearing a t-shirt. He's got something worse down below. So feel free to just, let loose and just really shoot those questions at us. So without further ado, we've got Anne and Minwoo, who will give a better introduction of themselves than I can possibly do.
Amazing, thanks Jason. I'll share my screen so you can see the slides that were prepared for everyone. All right. So let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, that's come through.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Anne. I am a legal automation consultant at HSF, Herbert Freehills, and I'm currently based in Melbourne. My role at HSF typically involves, helping our lawyers work better, quicker, and faster, and to, help our clients and our lawyers along that digital transformation journey. Min.
Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Minwoo. I am a customer success and delivery lead at Checkbox, which is a legal tech company based here in Sydney, Australia. Funnily enough, I do not have a law degree, so I am unique in that aspect among the hosts today. But I graduated with a business and IT degree and fell into legal tech straight out of uni and have spent the last few years in legal tech. So it's been really fun working with lawyers on it. And I work with amazing people like Anne to bring legal automation tools to life. So that's a bit about my background, and we're really excited to do this today.
Great. All right. We thought we'll just quickly start by covering off the different things that we want to talk about today. So first, talking about busting myths, what it's not like to work in legal tech or with legal tech, and then covering what we actually do on a day-to-day basis or what we do in a week. And then to go into more details as to, what the alternative career paths are in the legal industry, how legal tech vendors like Min and legal teams like myself collaborate on projects together, the challenges that we face in this space, and finally, ending on a more positive note, why we love our jobs. So, all right, to kick off, we're going to bust some myths. And I'm going to start by saying I often get asked this question of whether I have a background in IT or if I know how to code. The short answer to both questions is no. I don't know how to do either. I went to law school, so have no kind of like real tech expertise. And in complete honesty, I definitely do not perceive myself as someone who's great with technology. Like I still struggle to sometimes turn on my computer from every day. So I think the most important thing is that, you know, if you want to pursue a career in legal operations, you have to be keen to learn new things. And that involves, you know, learning the different technologies. You got to be passionate about the work. And, you know, along the way, I've learned how to use different platforms on the go, like Checkbox, without any sort of, like I said, previous tech experience. And look, if I can do it, you know, I'm sure you can too. So I'm going to let Min talk about the second myth, or maybe not so myth in his case.
So Anne and I were literally talking about this earlier today, and she put up this picture and she said, there are no ping pong tables and there are no beer taps. And I stopped her and I said, Anne, hold on a second. We do have ping pong tables and we do have beer taps. So Checkbox, when we were working in like a startup hub, we've moved now, but we do have a ping pong table as well. So the image you see there, Anne doesn't get that, I get that. So I'm going to put that out there. But Anne's completely right. There are a lot of lawyers that I personally work with and Anne works with that don't have a technical background, don't code at all, but still do very well in using legal tech solutions. So it goes to just show that vendors these days are really designing technology that is designed to cater for a non-technical background, such as a lawyer, and to let them use it in a way that fits their schedule, A, and B, in a way that allows them to apply their knowledge and expertise. So it's pretty exciting space, and working together with lawyers is really exciting in that regard. You do not need the technical expertise to work in legal tech.
Yeah, and look, you know, when Min told me about his working environment, I was super jealous. And, you know, like if only all of us had ping pong tables in our office. But look, I think digging a bit deeper here, you know, working with legal tech or in legal tech isn't all sunshine and rainbows. And, you know, in fact, it can often feel like you're fighting an uphill battle because you're trying to drive change, and that, you know, is a very difficult thing to do. But we'll jump into those challenges later on. So now that we've talked about, you know, what it's not like to work in legal tech, and what, you know, what's not required, I want to talk about what we actually do. And so, like, Min, I think let's start with you. Tell us what do you do on, you know, a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. It's interesting when we talk about legal tech companies. I think you can almost treat it like a technology company. So the great thing about it is that we just happen to work with lawyers, but the operations of a technology company in the day-to-day really is more like, say, working at Google. So to very quickly go through what our day-to-day week looks like, on Monday morning, every Monday morning, that we have a 25-person company, we'll come together and we'll do something called an OKR. So that's objective key result. And so everyone from myself to, you know, someone who's maybe a business analyst and an entry role, all the way up to the CEO, sit at a very flat table and we define what our objectives are for that particular week. And so there's radical transparency in that we know when we've hit our outcomes for that week. And there's a lot of trust and support in that if we, you know, need help from one another, we'll be able to you know, remember, oh, you know, Evan, who's my CEO, he needs help with this. Can I jump in and help him with that? And vice versa. And then throughout the week, my role, and I'll show a bit about that kind of in a few slides, because we're going to talk about the different roles you can get at a legal tech company. But my role in customer success has to do everything with, you know, after the sale, a customer who buys Checkbox, my role is to work very closely with them and collaborate to build out legal tech tools. And so that will be anything from early in the process where we're doing demos and we're really trying to understand the pain points for lawyers. So a lot of conversations, all the way down to, you know, project management and building on, you know, these legal tech solutions. So getting your hands dirty and through to support and answering tickets at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Because, you know, someone's playing in, you know, Singapore, let's say. So Daniel, if you're playing on Checkbox, I'll make sure I respond to your support ticket. so there's that. And yeah, and so the week to week is going to look quite different. And another thing that I'll mention is in a legal tech company, typically you'll have people who are doing multiple roles at any one time. So for instance, in February this year, I was doing a very large scale transformation project with an industry client who was doing 5 streams of legal tech solutions. So that was very project management focused. But in the past few weeks, I've been focusing a lot on marketing. So doing things like this with the webinar, you know, I just released a podcast, so doing that with Checkbox. So all of that really changes day to day, week to week. And I know Anne can relate to that. And then at the end of the week on Fridays, we typically do another all hands together to celebrate the wins. Again, in a very like horizontal communal manner. We just put up on the board all our kind of objectives and then go through one by one and celebrate all the outcomes that we've achieved. What about you, Anne? We'd love to hear how your week to week looks like.
Yeah, Min, I think you left out one really important part about your Friday celebrations. Don't you have that with unlimited beer?
Oh, that's right. and ping pong tables.
Yeah, so, very similar to Min, we don't have weekly meetings, but we do have fortnightly team meetings to set goals, milestones, and to discuss what projects we're currently working on. We also use the time to really brainstorm and strategize different approaches together. And look, my day-to-day work varies pretty significantly as well. I could spend hours and hours building or updating our automation products and workflow solutions, but the rest of the week may be spent on advising lawyers and our external clients on their ideas and their proposals. What that looks like, that involves typically, qualifying the opportunity with them. So validating the idea with them, identifying their solution requirements, ensuring as well that the project aligns with the team's or their firm's overall strategy. So I guess to put simply, it's fundamentally partnering with our lawyers and clients to go from an idea to ultimately launching a solution. And equally as important, to prompt them to also think about different automation opportunities. So that's pretty much how my week or my day-to-day work looks like. So I think, Min, shall we move on to tackle some of the tough but pretty interesting questions about working legal tech?
Yeah, that sounds good. And what we did before this was actually had a chat with Jason, Dan, and Sam, who I'm not sure is here, but he gave really good advice as well around some of the questions maybe you guys might be wondering about working in legal tech. So what we do is just kind of go through this list. And I realized there's a question here from Pius around what services offered by Checkbox. 10-second line. I forgot to explain. Checkbox is a automation and workflow platform that allows lawyers to create their own software. And so it allows them to make decisions and create document generations and things like that. So yeah, go check out the website as Daniel kind of put there if you want to find out more. But yeah, we'd love to dive into this around what these things are like. So the inner workings, right? Things that you wouldn't find out from looking at, just Google or LinkedIn or Glassdoor, for instance, or maybe Glassdoor. But what's under the hood? What is it actually like? So I've got a couple points here. So the first one is in working in legal tech is very unstructured. In private practice, you might find that there's a lot of, you come in at a particular role, X amount of years, you move up to the next tier and so on and so forth. And there's a very defined path of success and a very defined path of progression. And there's lots of support and training materials and mentorship along the way. In legal tech, and maybe more specific to startups, it's very flat. And what that means is that anyone can challenge one another. I mean, I find myself agreeing and disagreeing with, anyone up and down what you would call the hierarchy, and collaborating with the very same people to solve problems. And we face unique problems every single day. But that also means that there's no real structure, no real guidance. No one's really done it before. And we're just all kind of like, well, I don't know, like, well, let's just figure it out. And so if roles and titles are something that you really value, it may come as a surprise when you move into legal tech, because it doesn't matter as much, as weird as that sounds. And next one is ownership. So I think in private practice, and I've never been a lawyer, so I cannot say, but I would say it's more like a kind of gradual ownership process. So you kind of take on work and then you get more responsibility and so forth. And you kind of specialize into a particular area. In legal tech, and again, this might be more specific to startup, because there's a limited number of people doing a lot of work, you end up doing things that you're completely unqualified for, which is both scary and extremely exciting. So for example, I've never done podcasts before. I've never done like Adobe Premiere Pro, never touched any of that. Then like 4 weeks ago, they were like, hey, why don't we do a podcast? And I said, all right, let's try it. So that started the journey of putting out a podcast, and same with editing videos. I just had to learn it on the fly, even though I have no media background.
Well, it helps, Minwoo, that you have a really nice voice. So,
oh, thank you.
Podcast voiced.
Maybe it's your ears, everybody. Cool. So, and then working hours, very similar to private practice. I would say it's flexible and very outcome driven. You do need to be awake for customer hours, say 8:30 to 5:30, but it's ultimately outcome driven. So just because you work harder doesn't necessarily mean you'll be recognized and quote unquote promoted. It's all about the outcomes of what you can deliver. And on that note, I think also I will mention the kind of, it's the perfectionism mindset. That's what I wanted to address. So working with lawyers, I noticed that everyone's very detailed, which is amazing. And everyone kind of gets everything down to the T. So moving the needle from 98% to 99% is huge. Like just that one degree. And I love that too. I have a huge respect for that. In startup and legal tech, it's a little bit different. We try to get there, but if it's good enough, like if it's great, we're good to kind of submit that and move on to the next thing, because time is of the essence. And so that again is why week to week looks so different. You don't spend weeks and weeks on things, you spend like a week and then move on to the next thing. The last two things I'll say is team culture. So your team very well because it's smaller by nature. So maybe in private practice, you might know your specific practice area very well, and that will be your kind of team. Whereas in legal tech, you may know everybody across the whole organization and who are doing very vastly different things, which is very collaborative as well because you get a lot of insight from everyone. And finally, the question of salary, remuneration. Everybody wants to know about it. So chances are, if you stay in private practice, you'll probably make more money. And that's just by nature of the organization and the size of the organization. Typically in legal tech, you will get technology salaries. So if you're interested in finding out what type of salary you could get in the particular roles, we're about to touch that upon the different roles in a couple of slides. But Glassdoor will have everything for the tech companies. It's very defined, and I will cover that later. And the other thing is for startups, I'll mention, what's maybe different to working in a corporate environment is, you typically get a salary and a percentage bonus for performance or a performance bonus. In startup or legal tech that is new, you'll typically get a lower salary because cash is very limited, but what you'll get in exchange is typically equity. So you'll get a small percentage of the company, and the hope is that obviously the tech company becomes big. And so whatever you trade off in salary, you'll typically get in equity. And curious to know what it's like on your side of things and going through this list as well. So please share.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds all really exciting. So in terms of, the culture, and I think that there's a shift, right? Because when people think about practicing law, they also kind of associate it with pretty toxic cultures. And so people start to wonder, all right, what are the alternative career paths there? And would that also come with that potentially toxic culture? I'm going to speak from my experience at HSF because that's when I made that career switch. But I've personally found, the working environment really collaborative, both within the legal operations team, which is where I sit, but also working with the practice groups on various projects. And like, this may sound really corny, but like we call ourselves the dream team. And I think, to be honest, it's because we are I can see you laughing, Dan. Don't judge. So I think it's just because we get along really well, and we're always on the same page, helping each other out on different projects. We use each other as sounding boards. So that's really great. And another thing that has worked really well in light of COVID is so I joined the firm like in March, and then I had 3 days in the office, and then I was switched to completely virtual. So I've met like one person in my team. But what's really helped is we've had these walking meetings twice a week across Melbourne and Sydney over a WhatsApp call. And like, that's where, we'll get to know each other. We'll speak very passionately, mostly about food, but also about work. And that has really, bonded all of us together. So I would say in terms of culture, it's definitely very collaborative, not competitive in nature. So that's what I really enjoy. Working hours, look, I think this really depends on the projects you're working on. So, some projects that you work on may be time sensitive because they're matter specific or client specific projects. But otherwise with internal projects, you have that general project plan or timeline that's generally pretty flexible. So I think it really depends on how proactive you are in wanting to get things done efficiently. But to put things into kind of a more practical sense, I think on average, you'll probably be, between 9 to 7-ish. So it's relatively good. And again, very flexible. Like Min was saying, management expectations is very different. So I compare it to my time where I used to practice law. And so that would, as a lawyer, as a junior lawyer, you would draft a deed or agreement that would then be reviewed by probably a senior lawyer, a senior associate, or a special counsel, and then signed off by a partner, and then it will be sent out. So that's kind of like the normal traditional review management process. But the shift, in career that I found coming into legal operations is pretty different. You have a lot more ownership on your project. So your managers are there to guide you, and they're always available, to brainstorm with you. But really, you have a lot of autonomy in how you want to work on and manage your project. So I've really, really enjoyed that and thrived in that environment. And remuneration. So I think Min touched on this before, in professional services, your salary is going to go up. Like you start lower salary, but you'll go up really quickly. In legal operations, it's not so much a professional services role. So you start high, but you'll go up in smaller increments. So that's one thing to note. When I was deciding, whether I should stop practicing law and move into legal operations, I was trying to look for data on remuneration, and I couldn't find much in Australia because like legal operations came into existence maybe 3 years ago now. And so there's not much, like you can't really use Glassdoor, unfortunately, but I would definitely suggest to look at the US and the UK because they're a lot more established over there. So I think that would be pretty helpful. But yeah, so I think, now that we've covered those, what we do during our week and what it's like in our work environment, I think we can now kind of jump into what the different alternative career paths are. Min, did you want to talk about it from your legal tech perspective or startup perspective?
Absolutely. Let's dive into it. Sorry, I just realized you switched the slides around. So I'm like, oh no, that's all good. Cool. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Oh, cool. Great. So from legal tech, I've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I want to spend some time talking about the different roles and opportunities that are available if you were thinking about joining a legal tech company. And really paint a realistic picture about what a lawyer whose skill set, after 5-7 years of studying, where it would fit into that kind of picture. So first of all, sales and business development. So as the name suggests, sales is all about bringing in the money. So, it's very, very straightforward. You have a product that you want to sell and you have a target or, a number target that you need to hit. So typically in technology companies, you're selling a subscription, and that we call this software as a service, SaaS. That's like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year contracts that law firms and legal teams will purchase, and they will use your product. And so one thing that I've noticed a lot about the legal space is it's highly relational. And maybe that's just Australia, but I do think it's all around the world. The legal kind of ecosystem is highly relational, and part of what makes lawyers really successful for sales and business development is that relational component. The other thing is, if a lawyer were to think about moving into legal tech, especially in the sales side of things, you can definitely speak the same language and the same pain point. I think one of the things that I'm like, I wish I would have done that is, now that I'm in the legal tech space, I wish I had a law degree. I know that sounds so like weird for me to say that, but it's almost like lawyers have the same like kind of like, there is that kind of like, wow, like we made it, we're a lawyer now. And so that kind of camaraderie is really felt. And especially as a lawyer who moves into sales, I see it all the time. It really does help with that kind of melding and meshing relationship process. Having said that, it is pretty tough. Like any technology sales role, there are targets and you are assessed on that. And actually it's pretty tough it's not like, oh, we need to do A, B, C, D tasks. It's very much so you're out there either attending conferences or doing demos or sending cold emails or getting referrals. Very entrepreneurial in nature and very, very tough, I would say, just honestly. The next one I'll do is actually customer success. I know it's the third one down the list. It's my role. So after the sales guys do the hard work of getting the subscription across the line, that's where I get to come in with my warm and bubbly nature and be like, hey, we're collaborating now. We're not trying to say anything to you. So after the sales we made, what customer success does is make sure that the customer succeeds in using the product. So it's very hands-on. It's a lot of training and onboarding and teaching people how to use it. So a lot of my role is meeting with legal teams and law firms to show them how to use a product. And then from that point onwards is making sure that they're doing projects and making sure those projects are successful. We have the advantage, and this is a specialty of working at a legal tech vendor, is you work with multiple customers. And I can take conversations that I've had with this customer on this side, let's say in one particular industry with a telco, let's say, and say, hey, you in the FMCG sector, even though you're in the FMCG sector, your legal pain points are very similar. And so I have that kind of horizontal view and can, make the whole ecosystem grow and share the best practices of how to deploy legal tech solutions. And then there's other things like implementation, like I will get my hands dirty if legal teams don't have the resources to build up the tools themselves, and other things like support, so answering tickets and such. I've got marketing there. Now, marketing is not what it might seem like. I think people traditionally think of marketing as a very art-based kind of role, and very much so. I think marketing, a big part of it is knowing your customer, being the voice of the customer, branding, aesthetic, digital content, things like that. So if that's something that you as a lawyer, or even as a person, I should say, really enjoy, then maybe marketing is something you should be interested in. But I will note that marketing has a very a heavy science component, almost like a big iceberg. The part that you don't see is all the science and math behind it. Marketing is a very interesting field where you're calculating exactly the type of engagement and ways that people can see your content and see the company. If anyone has ever tried to Google stuff like, oh, I want to buy a bicycle, and then notice that every single website that they go to has the bicycle on the corners, like the ad follows you, that's someone's marketing team targeting you. So they know how to profile you, and that's the whole science behind marketing. And so I would just put that out there. If you're interested in the aesthetic and branding side, by all means, but just know that if you want to really grow in that kind of space, you'll need to know the science side as well. And finally, I've also...
Can I just chip in 1 second? So
yes,
absolutely. With marketing as well, you might really want to think about this as a lawyer or with someone with a law background. There's a lot of numbers in it. So if you're the type of person that has to pull up an Excel spreadsheet and you're like, oh my God, you might want to rethink that sort of angle as a career. But yeah, just want to throw that out there as someone who hates Excel.
That's a very good litmus test. If you hate Excel, do not think about marketing.
Hey, Min, got a question then. For
Yes.
marketing, does that include, I guess, like these kind of new roles that you're seeing around social media managers and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that part of it?
Yeah, that's huge. Social media marketing, and actually the big one is content marketing that you probably see a lot of. And you may have seen lots of posts from Daniel and Jason. I assure you they are not sponsored by anyone to actually do that, but there are people who are. There are people who are paid full-time salaries to actually create content that is engaging for their ideal, what we call an ideal customer profile. So, in this case, it'd be lawyers and legal teams in industry. They'd be creating and crafting stories that are very specific to that particular person's pain point. So yeah, you're right. Content marketing is probably something that if you're interested in, that's one role that you could go down in marketing. I've got product development there, and I don't know if it's the best fit for someone who has done a law degree, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. Product development, as the name suggests, takes a part of the product. Let's say for Checkbox's instance, because we're a platform, it might be, say, the document automation part of Checkbox, and almost owns that as like a CEO, and is responsible for coordinating between the customer and understanding their needs, as well as marketing and seeing if it's applicable across the whole ecosystem, and then designing that with the tech team, and then working together with customer success to make sure it's a success if we were to deploy it. So they're almost like a mini CEO, and the type of skill sets that you need there are very design driven, very user empathy driven, very aesthetic driven. Like you need to be able to know what the product's going to look like, what the pain points are, or the edge cases. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to reach out to me and I can share a little bit more about that. But for the most part, I've just put that there because it's another role that you could potentially move into, but maybe not the highest on the list of potential roles.
But it's so important. So it's kind of like, if I would say, oh, if only Checkbox had this particular feature, I probably say that to Min and he'll be like, all right, product development team, let's get this done. And what Min, you were saying before, they'll go on to like a 2-week sprint, do their magic, and all of a sudden there'll be this amazing feature in Checkbox, right?
Yeah, that's right. I have the privilege of just saying, yeah, I'm on your side. I'll let the product team know. And then I get to hold the whip and be like, product team, let's do this. And then they're like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. So I have the pleasure of being like collaborating with the clients, and product team has a hard job of getting all the stuff thrown in their face.
Doing the job, yeah.
Cool. So next out, I wanted to quickly go through some different roles that exist. So if that's something that interests you, where do I even begin to look? So these are 3 categories in front of you, but they are not the only categories that exist. I was just chatting with a friend, Alex from PwC, and he mentioned that there's probably somewhere between 1,000 to 4,000 different legal tech companies that exist in the world today. That might seem like a lot, but I actually think it's the beginning of the way. There'll probably be more in the future. So it's actually quite an exciting field. 3 kind of broad categories that are examples are like automation companies that do automating documents and workflows. So Checkbox would fall into that. Neurologic, if anyone's used that before. Joseph, which is based in Melbourne, if anyone's used that. Contract Express, you might recognize some of those names. Sorry if this is very specific to APAC. I apologize. Matter management, as the name suggests, more for industry teams to manage the requests coming in from the business. But Zakia, LawView, Litera, Transact, Leap, these are all companies that would be matter management. And doc review, we've got Relativity, Kira, Luminance, and Ringtail. So these would be categories that I'd be looking at. But if you're interested in finding out more, we've put together some links at the bottom there. Please do check them out, because it's worth having a look at an area that you're actually interested in if this is something you're seriously considering. And especially because I know that this is quite an international crowd, maybe look for something in your region, or if there's something that interests you, reach out and see if they'd be open to hiring overseas. I know with COVID, a lot of companies are open to doing that. So Legal Tech Hub, Stanford X have indexes. Legal Tech Directory is coming together. That's also an index. But what's also a pretty good way to kind of reach out and get to know tech companies is to actually look at the conferences. So Tech Law Fest in Singapore, huge. AltaCon, that's specific to Australia, but there's also Clock, which is based in the US, but they do have quite a few around the world. Have a look at them, because a lot of the leading legal tech companies go to those conferences for the purpose of marketing their particular product. And those are the companies that you probably want to be joining if you're interested in joining a legal tech team.
Yeah, or joining an online community as well, like the Legal Hackers, which comprise lots of different people from tech companies too. I think that would be a pretty good way.
Beautiful. No, that's great. And I think what I want to know now, Anne, is I would love to know the alternative roles that maybe someone who doesn't want to dive straight into legal tech and go, I don't want to work for a vendor. That's maybe not my ambition. But what type of roles exist within private practice that I could probably maybe pivot towards that is maybe not the traditional role, but something a bit more legal techy?
Yeah, definitely. So, for those who still want to work maybe within a law firm or within, the in-house teams of a corporate, you could start as a consultant or facilitator, or you can go down, like if you do have a bit more tech expertise, be a developer, or start with an analyst type role. And that, would fall into these different categories that you see on screen here. So legal automation, so that's one that I'm in. We do a lot of really interesting stuff. So we automate documents, workflows, processes, and it's really, really, really broad. And we use, platforms like Neurologic, where we create apps, and we, streamline that expertise from lawyers. So that's really cool. You've got legal process and design. So, before you can automate something, before you can automate a process, you have to understand how things are currently being done and why they're being done in a certain way. And so you have experts in this field trying to map out, all right, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How can we improve this process? So that's really cool. If that's something you're interested in, it's really, really critical in this, digital transformation journey. You've got legal project management, which is more, there's kind of an overlap here with legal ops, as Min and I were discussing before, but I think the main difference is that LPMs, they're more kind of practice group based. So for example, you can have an LPM in corporate where they would be, responsible for driving the corporate related projects and also, meta level projects as well. I think that would probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that would probably be for more like for people who have been in the profession for quite a while now. They know how things work and they have that familiarity with how things operate. Mm-hmm. So the trend I've been seeing is, senior associates who want kind of like a shift, who kind of want to shift their career a little bit, and they don't want to practice anymore. They may, transition into an LPM type role, and they really love it. They're really good at it, and they add so much value to their practice groups. The fourth one, which I actually haven't really heard of until I joined HSF, is legal pricing. And this is, so important. So, but for those who don't like Excel, then maybe this is not for you. But they typically are responsible for, making sure that we're pricing our services in the best way possible. And think about it from the perspective of, the rapid technological changes that we're seeing, which translates into clients demanding more for less, and demanding for, better, different pricing models. So this is where our experts come in to say, all right, let's wrap out our services in a package that makes sense. Maybe it's not the 6-minute timing billing model, maybe it's something else. Let's work it out together. So that's really important. And then last but not least, change management. So important. So for example, if you're introducing a different tech platform, or even just introducing a tech platform into an existing process, you need to manage that change well, because as I will go into further detail later on, asking someone to fundamentally change the way they work can be very disruptive. So people who work in change management help to make that transition a lot more seamless. But I'd like to now, again, go into that, where do these roles exist? So we've split up into 3 different categories, so similar to what Min did before. So we've got consulting services, we've got law firms, and industry. And by industry, I mean just corporates. So we'll start with consulting services. PwC New Law, which is where Alex works, I think, Min, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, we've got Thomson Reuters, we've got Moray, who recently merged with Genders Dean in the UK, and we've got Plexus. I don't know if Sam is in the audience, but Sam works at Plexus. He can probably talk more to that if he wants to. We've got law firms, so HSF, obviously, we've got a legal ops team, a global legal ops team. We've got Linklaters, Ashers, Clifford Chance. These are all, examples. Obviously, there's a lot more law firms out there in consulting services companies as well, that you can.
Masons.
Yes, Pinson Masons. Yes, I'm sorry, Jason. And then industry. So you've got ANZ, who they've got their own legal ops function in house, which is super cool. It's headed up by Elliot, who's an amazing guy. You've got Telstra. So I think, as Min was saying before, like you've got your telco companies, they've got their own legal operations team. L'Oreal's one. So Anna, who works there, and she's brilliant. And Lendlease, so a construction company, just for different kind of industries, really. So that's really exciting. These roles do exist, and they exist in different areas. So look for these opportunities because they're really exciting. I would say one thing though, going back to my previous slide, where if what you're interested in is not currently on the list, that doesn't mean it can't happen. So like I said, legal operations came into existence 3 years ago. Like, the field is constantly evolving. So if you have a particular skill set that you think would be able to contribute to the firm you're currently in, pitch that role. That's what I did last year. Go with the whole, look, I think there's a few problems here that I can solve with my skill set. I'm pitching for this particular position. I'm writing up the description of my position, and just go for it. Like I said, seize those opportunities because the industry is constantly evolving, and there is space to grow.
Yeah.
And
sorry,
also,
you go.
I was just going to say, I realized that a lot of the examples that we've given today and audience are quite Australia specific. Yeah. So just think of the categories for your particular region. There will be vendors, as Anne said, who are in professional services. Big Four would typically be all around the globe and will have a global team. But industry, obviously, the companies we mentioned may or may not be in your particular country. So just think of your different industries: telco, banking, FMCG, construction. They will all have legal teams, and all those legal teams will require at least somebody to be thinking about these roles, or starting to think about these roles as the trend emerges. And same thing with law firms. You will typically have, obviously, your kind of law firms all around the globe, but you might have region-specific law firms who will also be thinking about this. Particularly your second-tier law firms who are trying to differentiate by doing more innovative things. You may have somebody within that bracket. So in Australia, that's someone like G&T, for instance, who are doing, specifically at HSF as well, who are doing very specific things to do innovation in their particular law firm as well as their customers. So I just thought I might mention that because I knew that there were international attendees here.
100%. And I think like the trends I'm seeing, and I'm sure this is not Australia specific, but like at HSF, we're working with our clients in different industries to help their in-house teams set up their own legal operations functions. So I think, yeah, like the field is growing. There's going to be heaps and heaps of opportunities coming up. So definitely keep a lookout if you're interested. But right, so now that we've covered what Min does and what I've done, and the two different perspectives that we have, I want to bring our two worlds together and talk about how Min and I can work together, for example. So we're gonna do a quick role play. So say I am from law firm X and I have a problem where the information that we're disseminating to clients, it's really boring, it's really long, it's really wordy, and I want to think of a way to provide that information to our clients or to the public in general in a more intuitive and user-friendly way. So that's my problem. I then came across, while scrolling on Facebook, came across an ad from Checkbox because apparently their marketing team has targeted me for some reason. And I thought, wow, this platform's pretty cool. It's got all these cool features that kind of fit, within the problem that I'm trying to solve. So I then reach out to someone like Min, who's super warm and fuzzy. And I say, hey, I saw your ad and I want to find out more. What's next?
Fantastic. And the other thing that I mentioned, as Anne mentioned, there may be lawyers who are thinking about problems and reaching out. So I'll receive an email from Anne. I'm like, yay, Anne. Yeah, would love to show you a demo of the product. So that's the second phase. Now, obviously, the other journey that we haven't accounted for here is where we proactively reach out to legal teams directly. So your sales or BD team in a legal tech company would typically do that. After there is that interest established, we'll move to a demo stage. Typically takes about an hour. We used to do that in person before the world went crazy. And so everyone does it over Zoom, Microsoft Teams meets now, which is very convenient because I can do that in the comfort of my home. And then after that, every demo typically looks really, really good and looks like it solves a problem. So legal teams, being the risk averse and conservative teams that they are, will typically move towards a trial or a pilot stage. And that's where we give a very defined time frame for lawyers to play around with the tool, and Anne gets to play around with the tools. And so that's typically anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks where you kind of jump on and see if it actually it can be validated that solves a problem. Anne, anything to say here for the pilot stage?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's really important, like Min was saying, it's not often enough to just, have a demo and be like, all right, let's buy this platform. Like that doesn't usually work. We need to make sure that the users, so our lawyers, are actually comfortable with the platform and love using it because it's going to form a huge chunk of their day-to-day work. Typically, some of the pilots that we've been part of at HSF can go up to 3 months. And, for those kind of, I guess, more complex platforms, we would try and use them on live deals to make sure that, it actually works. And it's not, it's going to provide the lawyers with that really good user experience, and they're comfortable and they're happy with it. So I think the pilot stage is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
After you. Once we're happy with that, then what do we do then?
Right. So once that pilot is finished, and by the way, at that point, just to let you know, someone from the customer success team may actually be involved in that to make sure it is warm and fuzzy. It moves to the RFP stage. So most legal teams, and I'm speaking specifically about industry, but it may actually apply to law firms as well, will be required by policy to actually go through a request for proposal stage. It's to make sure that teams don't just out of instinct go for the first solution they think meets their needs, but it evens the playing field for other vendors out there. And so there's typically a public way for people to submit a document that says, hey, this is the technology, we're going to solve this particular problem, XYZ, and it's open to anybody to apply. Now, having said that, most teams will actually have a defined technology in mind when they go into RFP. It's usually just out of courtesy to go through that process. But that may take a couple months to actually pass through procurement and such. So that will actually typically flow up to senior decision makers, whether that's partner at a law firm or head of legal teams, who then make the decision to say, hey, at a board, we're making this decision to go with this technology. This is the cost. This is what it's going to bring. This is how much benefit it's going to bring. Let's go with this. They get sign off. And after they get sign off, it moves to the final stage, which is the negotiation stage. And as you guys all know, the contract comes through from the legal tech vendor, and then we go back and forth on different terms. So some of the things that you may want to know as a legal tech vendor that gets discussed quite a lot are things like, how long is the contract going to be for? Price is the obvious one. How many users get access to the technology? Who can I reach out to? And do I get immediate support? Because things can go wrong. Will you always be online? Where's my data stored? So there's a lot of different things here that undergo negotiation. That process can take, again, a couple months. And so you can already tell, before we move on to the next thing, that this, from interest all the way through to negotiation, particularly when we're working with legal teams, can take quite a few months. And it does take a bit of patience and resilience to actually work together. And it's a good thing because, again, time builds relationships. And throughout this whole process, what you're not seeing is that we as legal tech vendors and legal teams as lawyers are working together very closely. We're getting on first name basis. We used to go out for coffee. We don't do that anymore because it's not socially acceptable, but we would love to go back to coffees together. And so, yeah, that relationship and building is happening. And the beautiful day happens when the contract is signed. So, Anne, what happens after the negotiation process and we lock in a vendor? What happens?
Well, Min was saying that once you lock it in and sign the contract, you're basically married. So that's, I guess, a pretty good.
For 1 year.
Yeah,
1 or 3 years.
Lasts for, but like as Min said, like time builds relationships, and you're going on that really long journey together, and you finally reach that great outcome of negotiation, and you've decided on the tech, you've invested in the tech, but then comes the actually difficult part, and that's adopting and implementing the technology, right? Because now you're trying to make sure that the lawyers are actually using it. And that's difficult because, they're very used to the way that they're currently working. And to ask them to transform the way that they work can be, again, like I said before, very disruptive. And disruption is not always positive. So it's very important to have change management because that will make sure that, again, like the transition is seamless. So that change management encompasses things like communication. So it's really, really, really important to communicate to the lawyers. What is it? Why is it? How you're doing it. It's also really important and critical to empathize with them. So lawyers are always working on lots and lots and lots of different things. They don't always have the time or capacity to be focusing on tech projects or using different technologies, right? So and so that also brings it to, you want to create a culture where they're comfortable in sharing their thoughts and asking questions and being able to tell you if something's not okay and not working. Which brings me to my next, 3 points, where this is where it will be really good to leverage that relationship or that marriage you have with the legal tech vendor, because you want to be able to work with them to provide your users with training, guidance, and support. And also, very importantly, giving back to the vendors, ongoing feedback, because as Min said before, like the product is not going to be perfect. Like the chances of it ticking off every single one of the requirements on your wish list, probably not going to happen. So it's an iterative process where, you give them feedback, they improve their product, and the marriage gets better. But like interestingly enough, like Min and I, the first time we met was through a training session. So at my previous firm, they use Checkbox. We adopted the tech. Min came in, or warm and fuzzy, saying, all right, let's give you guys training. The lawyers really appreciated it. We got on board, we got really excited. And then we started using it really effectively. So that was really amazing. I would say one thing as well, as Min said before, they work with so many different clients. So having those conversations with your legal tech vendor can give you really valuable insights. Have scenario planning sessions with them. They know what's worked, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what could work. So this is an example this is a cheat sheet that I put together a couple months ago after listening to 15 minutes of a presentation by 2 amazing women from Litera Microsystems, I think. So they're a massive legal tech company based in the US. And based, like, this cheat sheet has saved my life this year. Like, I have referred to this pretty much every single day when I'm working on projects, how to successfully onboard technology. So that's just one example. It's important to note that, during that process, there are going to be challenges. So we started off this kind of we start off with busting myths. And I said that, you know, sometimes it can be really frustrating. It can feel like you're often fighting an uphill battle. Well, these are the reasons why. So firstly, you know, as Min suggested, like, I don't think this is specific to lawyers. I think humans in nature are very risk averse. And so they are not going to, you know, immediately jump at the thought of trying something new. So that's something you got to ease them into, which is why change management is so important. And then we talked about the long approval process. So there's lots of stakeholders. You've got your partners, you've got your management team, you've got your CEO, your C-suite class people, all of them, you know, to approve a project. And technology, we know it's not cheap, it's expensive. And so getting the approval can be hard because you've got to justify the value of it. And then, like we said a couple of times now, you know, lawyers are very busy people. So you got to respect that, and you got to somehow fit it in within their schedule. And like I said, so limited budget as well. Tech's not cheap. So if you're not a massive corporate firm or a corporate, it's going to be hard for you to be investing in technology, which is unfortunate but true. So, all right. You know, given that there's all these challenges, the way we overcome it is to remember why we're doing it in the first place. So focusing on the bigger picture here, right? Why are we doing this in the first place? Like, what do we love about our jobs? And I'm gonna say really briefly. So on my part, the best part of my job is, you know, the part that brings me the most happiness is being able to help the people I love, so the lawyers I work with, do what they love in the best, most user-friendly way possible. And the flow-on effect is, you know, for example, through automation, we're able to improve the overall, you know, client experience, lawyer experience, because we're able to deliver faster, better, and more cost-effective services to them. And I think Min can speak to that as well.
Yeah, and the other thing that I mentioned on top of what you mentioned, Anne, is in the process of improving lawyers' life, as you mentioned, there are all those challenges around resistance. And I think we've got a question here which we'll address right after around, you know, people who are very risk averse. And the good thing is that the industry is changing. The good thing is that, you know, I was mentioning before that, you know, the legal industry is one of the last, if not the last industry that has professional services industry that needs to go through automation change. Accountants went through it 10, 15 years ago. You know, they went from very rote, you know, manual work, and now they're doing, you know, very advisory, very high value work. So it is an emerging field, and that's why it's exciting. And I get to say all the cool things, which is we get to play with tools that are amazing and just really exciting to work with. And you get to meet some really like cool people. Like honestly, people who are thinking about legal tech are, you know, generally open-minded and open to change and open to innovation, want to try things in a new way. So it's quite fun and quite encouraging. Cool. So before we move to Q&A, and please do post questions, we're happy to answer them. And we just want to let you know some things that are happening on in our lives. We'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, we can't go through the full list, so please do us a favor. And if you'd like to connect with us, please do so. We've left links there, but it's not too hard to find us on LinkedIn. We also wrote an article together on practical steps for lawyers and how to actually transform the way you work. So literally a step-by-step on how to do that. We wrote it and we want to share that with you. So go and check that article. And then I get the sneaky little promo there. As I mentioned earlier, I did start a podcast around digital service transformation with Checkbox. I like it. I listen to it on the way to work. So if you like legal transformation, then go ahead and check that out. Would love if you could listen to that, and it would obviously be a big encouragement to me as well. Awesome. So let's move to some Q&A.
Sorry, 1 sec, man.
Oh yes, I'll see.
Just 1 minute before this. So just before we jump into Q&A, I just want to mention, like, we've learned a lot from all of this. We kind of know how legal tech vendors and legal tech people in firms actually work. I just want to point out that you don't have to completely change your career to actually pick up some of the things that we're talking about. In fact, as a modern lawyer, as a young lawyer especially, if you can pick up some of these principles like legal project management, like knowing how to adopt legal technology and teaching your team how to use it to solve problems that they're facing, that actually, without changing your whole life, it puts you in a better perspective or position within your own team to eventually, you know, stand out, get those pay rises, get those promotions, actually build upon the strengths that you have, rather than just be someone who has to put out technically perfect legal product A and then technically perfect legal product B all the time. So yeah, just keep all that in mind. Try to draw from these principles. It's all super helpful. And yeah, again, if you have any legal tech questions, feel free to ask Anne and Minwoo. If you have any general questions about being a lawyer, and because it's really rewarding, but it can be really tough. That's what Daniel and I kind of write about, and we love to talk to you guys about. So feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn as well. And all we ask is that you pay it forward, for when you're more experienced, you make it easier for the people below you. So with all of that in mind, we'll just shoot through Q&A now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. I love that. I love that advice you mentioned. So I've got one from Avi, and I'll let Anne answer it first because I want to know what your answer is here. So Avi says, most young lawyers would ride, they've got this problem where senior stakeholders are more resistant to change, and they want to obviously, as someone who's maybe a junior lawyer, try to instill or promote change. How can they do that when there is resistance from senior leadership, and how can they drive adoption and adaptation within a firm?
That's a great question, and very realistic as well, because it is true that you are going to face some sort of resistance no matter where you are. I guess I can give you a few tips, and whether or not it might work for everyone, I don't know the answer to that. But what I found have worked is showing them what the possibilities are. So I guess going back to maybe the job keeper navigation app that we built at HSF, what we did was instead of asking them, hey, can we build this app, or can we pursue this opportunity, we just went for it. We created a prototype, we showed the partners, and we said, hey, check this out, this is what we've built. And I think that really opened up their minds to so many different possibilities, and they were like, wow, this is really great. And showing them like it's not going to take too much time, it's not going to take too much effort, the impact is amazing. Like making sure that you give them a really strong business case as well. Like that's on you. Like you need to show them that your proposal has foundations to it. I think that would help. Like think about, how do these seniors kind of think? They think in terms of like, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them would think in terms of like billables, like revenue, how much money can it bring in? So you want to include that perspective as well, to say like, hi, I've got an idea, I want to build this app, I think we can commercialize it, I think it would increase revenue by X, or increase efficiency by 45% or whatever, which translates into blah dollars. I think that would definitely help.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that. There's probably two broad buckets that someone within the law firm might want to be thinking about. One you mentioned already. Actually, you mentioned both, but I'll just kind of drill down from them. One is the bottom line, the revenue. So if there is an idea that for a fact is going to produce revenue for the firm, that's a compelling business case to bring to someone who's a senior stakeholder and say, hey, we can actually do this. We can actually make money. Let us try and experiment with it. And it comes back to that interest and demo thing, right? So without investing, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars into legal tech, you can trial something and create something and validate it very quickly with your target market, see if there's potential out there. So that's one bucket, revenue. The other one is cost cutting. So if you think about the operations of a law firm, and it's going to apply more so for, I would say, the US market and maybe UK market. For a big organization managing lots of people, there's a lot happening. And if you can say create 10 to 30% efficiency and demonstrate that using an MVP approach, again, trying the smallest amount, trialing things and literally just validating, is this a good idea? And showing the numbers, that's compelling to someone who's a senior decision maker, especially in a risk averse environment. So I hope that's helpful. Second question here, we've got, I'm currently in private practice. This is Eunice, and my boss would like to technologize the firm and has tasked me to do something. How do I kickstart this process? That's such a great question. And I'll share a bit about my experience. So the best way to kind of go about approaching that is to first identify what the pain points are for your particular firm. So every solution is going to look shiny, but when you get to the decision-making stage, it always comes down to what am I actually trying to solve and what type of benefit am I trying to get? So I would start by putting together a list of things that you think are the key pain points within the firm and that immediately need, to be radically technologized. Is it inefficient billing? Is it inefficient, communication systems? Is it inefficient, document storage and automation? What is it? Put a list together and then prioritize them. In fact, the article that Anne and I wrote together might be a good starting point, not to plug it too hard, but it actually has all that information in there for you to then put together at least a starting point for saying, hey, these are some things that we can start with. I'd love to solve them. After you have an objective idea what you want to solve, you can then start to look for solutions, and it's going to make a lot more sense when it comes to that problem. Anything to add, Dan?
I think, yeah, definitely the pain point is really important. But I think in order for you to identify those pain points, you need to understand how things work. So trying to map out the existing process is definitely where I would start, because that would be so useful. Like once you have an oversight or an overview of how things work, that's how you're gonna be able to revamp everything and have that good overview of all the different pain points. And again, like Min said, like how you're going to prioritize them, what's causing you the most agony. But yeah, I think like again, like this is not to promote our article, but we feel very passionate about these things. We live and breathe these every single day. Digital transformation is our thing, and that's why we wrote that practical guide, which would step you through that process, and so hopefully that helped. But we're also happy as well to have that conversation offline with you if you like.
Absolutely. We've got Carmen here, who's a junior associate in Malaysia with a portfolio in intellectual property and general litigation. They're looking for opportunities in legal tech. They said, 2 questions here. What employers would look out for during the hiring process if they were to make a switch in career paths? And 2, is it necessary to have knowledge and experience in cyber law / data privacy to handle day-to-day work in legal tech? From my experience, from the switching side of things, it will largely depend on the legal tech vendor. Obviously, what's going to help is if your particular area of expertise, and this kind of taps into your second question, is exactly what the legal tech company is solving for. So if you are in contracts, I don't know, generally, and that's something that you want to look in for, doc automation helps if you've had experience in contracts. So if the thing that employers are typically looking for in sales and BD, it's relationships and ability to work with customers and how well you are, generally selling things. Again, I would approach it more as a technology company as opposed to law firm to law firm. For customer success and delivery and implementation, again, the warm and fuzzies helps, but attention to detail, these are all skill sets that you do learn as a lawyer. Striking that conversation, you'll definitely be able to get in through the door, and your experience working in private practice will be to your advantage. But again, there is no strict guideline here when it comes to what they're looking for. And to quickly answer your second question, I don't necessarily think you need to have that knowledge, though it will help, certainly when you're talking with lawyers in that particular field. And I'm sure their pain points you will understand very acutely. And so when you're working with a legal tech company, it'll make a lot of sense when you're trying to sell that solution. Anything to add, Anne?
I would say that is actually so beneficial because, thinking about the approval process and stakeholders as well, like when pitching an idea, I've had or showing like a demo of what I've built, I've had partners grill me about where's the data hosted? Is it in cloud? Like what are we doing for IP? So having that background knowledge about cyber law or data and privacy would definitely help you there, I reckon. But in terms of, what employers would look out for, again, I think it is a very interesting question. I think because the landscape is so new in Australia, it's pretty flexible. So I guess a background for me is I started as a grad last year, and then I got admitted to practice. So I don't have that much legal background. Like I did paralegal work for a couple of years before that. But other than that, like pretty basic, so very baby junior lawyer. And so, I think probably what helped me make that switch is, during my time as a grad and before that, I was involved in a lot of innovation projects, so as Jason mentioned before, and we actually call them like innovation champions, or just champions in general of like a particular practice group. Very good way to stand out, by the way. But that gives you lots of, different experiences, and you can speak to that as well. The one advice I would give is, and I'm actually passing this on because I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to make that career switch, or if I should have stayed on to practice law a bit longer. So I spoke to Elliot, who heads up the legal operations practice at ANZ, and he was like, he said if I was looking to hire, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to hire a person who practiced law for X number of years and then made the switch to legal ops. Like if that person had little knowledge of law but have more experience in legal operations, so for example engaging in those innovation type activities, like that's good enough. So I think it's again very flexible.
Awesome. Next question here for you, Anne, and this one's a doozy. As we say in Australia, it's a curly one. What is your outlook on the trend for legal tech jobs within law firms in the next 5 years? So this is like demand, importance, remuneration, opportunities, because it looks rather bleak in Singapore. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not super familiar with the landscape in Singapore, but I definitely think there would be opportunities on the horizon. I mean, I think like we've got legal ops people at HSF in Singapore, and there's just so much work and there's so much demand. So I think even though we can't see it like right now, I think, you know, over the next couple of years, definitely you will be seeing those roles come up. You know, you'll see consultants coming up, you see all these different new titles coming up. So in Australia, at least, only in the last kind of year and a half, I've seen these roles come up. Like I've never really turned my mind to legal operations, but this sudden burst. So I think, you know, similarly will happen in Singapore as well, for sure. And also, just because you don't see it now doesn't mean you can't be a trendsetter and pitch for your roles too.
And I think you shared it earlier, but that's how you made that switch into your current role, right? You actually broke out of the mold, said, actually, I want to do this. So you put together an application, went for it. That's awesome. And the other thing that I'll say is in the slide pack that Anne and I put together with the different avenues that you can go in, if law firms is an area that, if you're interested in legal tech, but maybe law firms is not an area that there's a lot of opportunity in, again, look at some of the other players in industry who are going to obviously be looking for full-time roles in there, or professional services / consulting, and they'll definitely have roles there, and they tend to be more global anyway. So definitely, if you're interested in it, I'd be looking outside if you can't find opportunity in law firms. And this kind of goes, so Zane asked the second question here, so thank you, Zane. What is your outlook on the legal tech consulting industry, e.g. tech law consulting practices in PwC, Deloitte? Who will be the players in this industry, and who do you think, and do you think there will be demand to match? This is such a great question. The answer is absolutely yes, yes, yes. In fact, in the US, it's happening now. There are consulting, so Moray, as you mentioned earlier on, Elevate Services, these are all global consulting services that are really emerging and providing legal ops as a service. Because what's the alternative? I think there was a report from, I think, Clock that came out that said, on average in the US, I think the maximum number of full-time legal ops people within a legal team, average is 6, I think. So you're paying 6 people's salaries full-time to do legal operations, or you can outsource that to a consulting firm. So we're seeing a lot of movement in Australia with PwC, with new law, but even globally, Moray and Elevate Services providing implementation. But I think the niche, and this is just my opinion, so if you quote me, make sure you say it's an opinion, is that I think the opportunity is going to be legal ops as a service and helping legal teams move from, I have no idea how to do this, to here's a strategy, here's the operations that you need, here are the processes, here are the technology, like putting the A to Z around how to make your law firm digitized. That's the service that consulting services are going to want to put together. And that's the value that legal teams are going to want to pay for. So hopefully that answers your question there. And anything to add there, Anne?
No, totally agree with that. Nothing further from me.
Cool. This one is really good for you, Anne. I like this one because we were talking about it last week. Do you think accreditation certification programs are helpful? Legal tech seems like a broad subject to have it as an objective assessment, but how do we demonstrate our interest in the subject to be able to pitch to our potential employers? And we'd love to get your thoughts on that because we did talk about it.
Yes, and I can see Amy, my mentee, is online as well. She is amazing. So Amy and I have been talking about how, you know, in law school, we don't actually really have subjects that cover topics like legal tech. And we think it's really, really important. I mean, like for people who are interested, I think there's lots of people who are interested, especially because legal tech should not be an option. It's BAU. If you want to succeed and if you want to be efficient in your work, you need to be able to know how to use legal tech. I definitely think, you know, those certifications and programs are helpful. That's just one way to show how you're passionate about the work in the industry. You have certification programs that legal tech vendors are providing, like I think Joseph has one. So I think Amy, you probably did that as well. Like, do you want to share your experience and how that's helped you along that journey? Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way.
Hey everyone. So I recently did the Joseph Design Builder program, and basically it gives you access to the Joseph platform for, I think, about a month it ran for, and you learn about different things such as legal design, conditional logic, computational law, marketing, sales, like literally everything that's got to do with the legal tech process. And it was super interesting and really interactive. And you get to create your own fully functioning legal tech bot by the end of it, which is super exciting. Yeah, I think it's super fun to just get involved in as much as you can, to just like have a bit of test of the waters, see if you like it. So definitely recommend that program if anyone's keen to have a go.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Oh,
I
sorry,
mean,
Nalti.
how else do you reckon, we'll be able to demonstrate your interest, like in the subject of legal tech? Like if someone came up to you and said they want to work at Checkbox, what would you be looking for?
That is such a great question. Before I answer that, I'll also mention that we at Checkbox are also releasing a certificate program, but I'm just letting you know because you guys came along to this webinar, so I'll let you know that.
I wasn't sure if that was confidential. Sorry.
No, that's fine. We're releasing it very soon. So keep your eyes peeled on LinkedIn. Connect with me if you haven't already, because it will go up. Yeah, I think for legal tech vendors, I think certificates are great, but it would be more from the technology side of things. So certainly I think the vendor certificate programs are great if you want to show that you're interested and you want to join that particular company. But the type of certificates that you're going to go for are typically specific to the roles that are in legal tech, are the ones that I mentioned around sales, marketing, CS, customer success, project management. Lean Six Sigma seems to be pretty popular one. And products. So you'd be looking at those certifications, and it makes sense. I've heard a lot in law firms that lawyers are interested and want to get certified in different things to differentiate themselves and show that they're proactive. I 100% think that's a great way to go. If that's something that you're keen on and want to upskill yourself, please do that. That's a good way to kind of sharpen yourself and get comfortable with legal tech that is out there. And especially if you're in uni now, or if you're a grad, that's a great time. Not to say that's, not to say if you're already in law firm, it's too late, but if you're early, get involved, because you have the time now to do that, and you'll get your hands dirty with things that are emerging in that field. A question from Bethany here, which relates
sorry, and Minwoo, one question. So talking about certification, what if you don't want to dive too deep into law tech, legal tech, and want to kind of stay on the periphery, stay more theoretical, and do certifications like data privacy, CIPP, and those kind of certifications to get a taste of kind of tech, but not really, it's not directly to legal tech, but what do you think is the value of those certifications?
That is a great question. I would say it's circumstantial. So it depends on why you want to get. So I would say always have a purpose behind why you want to get a certificate. If it's got, for the purposes of understanding legal tech and you want to get more hands-on and you want to be that person who understands the landscape, then that's a good reason to do that. But if you're kind of, I don't know the particular certification that you're referencing, but if it's just there to if it's unrelated to what you're trying to achieve, then I would say maybe not, unless obviously you think that your future employer, your current employer looks upon that favorably. And again, that's a purpose, right? Like you're trying to do something for either a raise or change your position or whatever it is. So I would weigh those things together, but I can't comment on that particular certification. Anything to add?
What was that certification again? Sorry, Daniel.
CIPP. So
what's it in relation to? Like, what topic is that cover?
Data privacy.
Yeah, so I think
it's a fairly new one, and I'm seeing a lot of law students. Everyone during this time, they have time to kind of do it,
yes.
Right? So whether it's useful or not.
Yeah, and I think there's difference. There's there's your legal tech, there's your legal operations, but then there's also digital law, which is really exciting, where you deal with smart legal contracts, you deal with data, you deal with privacy, you deal with cyber law, you deal with technologies like blockchain and how that interacts with the operation of law as well. And so I think if you're interested in that space where you're still keen to practice, but to practice in that technology type related law, then definitely I think those courses would be super valuable.
Awesome. Bethany has a question here around soft skills. What soft skills and hard skills should you suggest legal students to pick up before entering the legal tech field? Great. I mean, I can basically say, if you were to rephrase it as, what do you need to join a technology company? Typically, the sales and business development divisions are fairly open door. So for them, they can be pretty much, they'll just do an interview and get a sense of how you are relationally. It's a very soft skill driven job. How do you strike up conversation? Can you hold it? Do you understand how to sell things? Do you understand how to navigate pain points? things like that. So from that front, I would say there's no real hard skill that you need to pick up for sales specifically, but soft skills, certainly you just need to be able to know how to sell and understand pain points of the customer. So practicing that would be good. For customer success and implementation specifically, project management is a really big one. So if you've demonstrated project management in uni where you've done you've done projects, either within your law degree, but also extracurricular, like, your unis and society things that you can always be involved in. That is a major plus sign, because there's going to be a lot of projects that you're involved in where the detail matters, and knowing how to organize people and move them towards a deadline is really, really important. Yeah, anything to add there, Anne?
I think the only thing I would say, and this is probably very general, and you probably heard it before, is empathy. I can't say that enough, but being able to empathize and build strong relationships with people would take you very, very far in your career. So that's one thing I'll add.
Awesome. Amy's got another. I hope that answers your question, Bethany, but always happy to have conversations offline if you might realize it was a bit of a shorter answer there. Amy's got a question here where it says, while the legal tech market is quickly growing, what do you think are the main roadblocks now to restricting the booming industry? Do you think it is because people do not fully understand the power of legal tech? That is a great question. It's sort of. I think as I mentioned before, lawyers in the legal industry is one of the last, if not the last, professional services industry to be disrupted, and largely because of its reluctance to change. It's largely accepted that the way that it has operated in everything from the way it's built to the way that law firms and legal teams in-house have interacted, that's just been a very accepted and maybe sedentary model. But now, as law firms grow in their technical capability, but also budget constraints seems to be a big one nowadays, especially with COVID. Legal teams in industry are saying, why are we spending so much on services? What can we cut down? Again, it comes back to revenue and cost reduction. Can we reduce the cost that we're spending on certain things? And that's where legal tech comes into play. And so I don't necessarily think I think the key roadblocks would probably be, as we mentioned earlier from Anne's previous slide, is that senior decision maker buy-in, convincing them, having that open mindset to try things, invest in things. I think in at least Australia, and maybe in we can only really speak to Australia at the moment. It tends to be relatively closed door as opposed to US and the UK. I feel like the US and the UK tends to be a little bit more open to innovation, maybe just because of the nature of how things are there in the US, with Silicon Valley and such. So it's a little bit open there. In Australia, there's a little bit more work relationing to be done before change happens. So I would say culture is a big one. And also just the model that, as I mentioned before, that's set up at the moment. Incentives around law firms to change the way that they operate are changing now, and mentioned pricing. So pricing is a big one. As industry goes, well, actually we have a limited budget. We can't be spending all this money on services. Let's look at tech. Let's look at more specialized ways of using our money. So those are the kind of movements that I'm seeing at the moment. Anything?
Culture is a big one, and that really translates into the amount of money going into legal tech. There's so much money going into legal tech in the US, billions of dollars. I think legal is an example, but then in Australia, it's pennies really in comparison, and I think that would be the biggest roadblock to the industry growing. But I don't think either that will be a roadblock for very long, because we don't have a choice but to evolve. So that's good news for you, Amy.
That's right.
Yeah, sorry, just to chip in on that, as a practicing lawyer working in the trenches, I think you'll find that the senior lawyers you're working on are almost like, the tail of the lumberjack that's too busy cutting wood to sharpen his axe. It's really where we have an opportunity to shine, is actually to an extent showing them that, hey, you're working on this problem. We've been complaining about this problem the whole time. I've experimented with this different way or this different legal product that you might not have thought about. Here's how I've applied it. This is the result that I'm getting. If you're happy with what we're achieving here, I'm happy to help run it. And on a bigger scale, that's really where we have an opportunity to actually butt into that conversation. Otherwise, people are just saying, well, I've got no time to do it. I've got to get these deliverables out, blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit more effort on your part, but that's how you drive that change and drive those results, at least from someone who is more of a junior lawyer. So yeah, I'd probably try to take that sort of approach.
Awesome. We're mindful that we've gone 20 minutes over time, but we're so thankful because it looks like most people stuck around. In fact, we had quite a few people join at the end. We might just, first of all, thank you everybody for coming along and, you know, wherever you are in the world, tuning in. We're so thankful that you've spent time and hopefully you've got something out of it. Again, connect with us if you want to find out more. The slide deck and the recording will be available to you. I might just hand it back over to Jason and Daniel because I'm sure that there's some closing remarks that you guys want to make. But again, everybody, on behalf of Anima, just thank you so much for coming along. I hope you got something out of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, you want to do the closing?
All good. Nothing here. Thanks. Thanks you two for
Put you on the spot.
I was posting your links, so feel free to connect with Anne and Minwoo on LinkedIn. Very knowledgeable. They post really regularly. Minwoo with his podcast, and Anne with her talking about transition to legal tech from a lawyer perspective. So that's very interesting for many lawyers and law students. But no, thank you so much for coming out. I think if you have any questions, feel free to message them on the side.
Yeah.
Aside from that, yeah.
And I guess if you've enjoyed this webinar, if you're interested in more webinar topics, feel free to reach out to me and Daniel. We're always looking for ideas. Whatever is helpful to you, we'll try to fit it in. And yeah, just if you got something out of this, feel free to spread the word. But yeah, we're kind of here for you guys really because we had people help us along the way too.
That's so
All right.
sweet.
All right,
Fuzzies.
great.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone.
Guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.